16th century, and you're in northern Italy. And something very dramatic happened then. A very devastating illness called, and I have to, this is a very difficult word, the puerperal fever, also known as the Black Death of childbirth, was devastating communities, initially in Italy, but then it spread all over Europe very quickly. And basically the Black Death of childbirth killed women within 48 hours of them giving birth. And in some communities, it was up to 70% of women who were dying because of this new disease. And it was growing, it was really spreading. People didn't understand what was going on. But you know, it was the Renaissance for God. It was a time of science. So all those men of science were trying to understand what's going on here. Why do we have this new disease? And so they took the corpses of the dead women and performed autopsies. And those doctors would then perform autopsies, and then in the morning and then in the afternoon go and deliver babies. And again, perform autopsies and deliver babies. Yet they couldn't find the answer. Those men of science couldn't find the answer, and the disease spread again. Up until a doctor, a very famous doctor, called Dr. Oliver Holmes, started thinking about this and found the reason. He said, you know what? You, my dear fellow doctors, you are the problem. There is something we fail to do when we perform autopsies, then you deliver babies, but you don't even wash your hands. Now, they loved that thing. They were scientists, for God's sake. The problem must be much more complex. Right. And they actually ignored his advice for 30 years. 30 years during which that disease spread all over Europe, again with devastating results. Now, after 30 years, habits changed, and people started washing their hands. And within a few years of people understanding that, maybe I have to wash my hands before I deliver babies, the disease completely disappeared. It was that simple. Now, the reason why I told you this story is because it shows you two things. First, sometimes we are the problem. And the second lesson is, well, sometimes we don't need to go look very far, look for a very scientific or very complex solution. Sometimes the solution is right here, very simple. Now today we have, that was the puerperal picture. Today we have the same problem with our men of science, or actually I will call them our men of finance. Now if you look over the past 100 years, what happened on the societal level? First of all, the concept of market, the market has really replaced society in the past 100 years. 100 years ago, we were mostly natural people, natural persons. We were individual, communities, families, and today we're mostly corporate people. We think mostly of ourselves as, well, a business person, a banker, a doctor, and so on and so forth. And this is how we define ourselves. Over the past 100 years, money has really displaced meaning. So the question I have is, well, what is the role and responsibility of business in these developments? Obviously, these developments are probably not something we want. So the topic of today is, well, is that really the kind of progress we want? And in a sense, can we reconcile business performance or economics with societal progress or human Now, it is important, it is something that we need to look at very carefully, because in the future, governments will not define societal progress. Businesses, corporations will. And I'm not the one saying it. The famous Dr. Jared Diamond from UCLA actually made that statement a couple of years ago. So businesses are actually the ones that will define the way we treat people. Now, what does it mean for capitalism? And in a sense, what is capitalism? And if we look at capitalism, in my opinion, there are two ways. There's many ways to define capitalism, but the simplistic way is to say, okay, well, capitalism is about two things. First, it's about property rights. It's about owning things. And having property rights gives you incentives. If I own something, I get money from either selling it or renting it or whatever. The second aspect of capitalism is also the price mechanism, what we call the market pricing. And this is about information. It gives you information. The price of something gives you information about almost everything. And actually, well, it's debatable, but someone recently stated that the largest amount of information in the world is not Google, or it's not the traditional type of information, books and so on and so forth, but it's really the stock market or any value that is related to valuating items. And that gives you the largest amount of information. But now you see that, okay, if we define capitalism as either property rights or price mechanism, we have some issues. For example, well then question, what is the price of health? What is the price of clean air? What is the price of human relations? Capitalism doesn't help us define those. There's another issue also, the concept of price fixing, and I give you a very, very simple example. If today you go to Nice, for example, you buy a tomato that comes from a specific plantation, and then you come to Monaco, you buy a tomato that comes from the same plantation, yet the price is different. What is the real price? What's going on behind? And of course, we've all heard about the concept of misplaced incentives. Incentives are not really related to either performance or related to any sort of value. So obviously capitalism in that sense is not suited to valuating everything. So what is next? What I'd like to show you today is, well, how can we improve the system? What can we do different? And my point is, well, let's try to reintroduce some human elements to the equation. And we'll see some of them today. So human elements being, for example, imagination, creativity of human people to change the world, codependence, co-creation. We'll define those in a moment. And this is a little bit my personal path. This is what passions me. Is to find a little bit that middle road. How can you reconcile economic and social, which usually we keep very, very far apart. So what is that path in the middle? How can I reconcile both? Because frankly, without socials, economics is really barbarism. But on the other hand, without economics, social is utopia. So where do we go in the middle? And I'd like to give you three concepts or three ideas that maybe will allow us to reconcile those two concepts. And the first one is, well, basically it all starts with people. We're going to refocus on people. There is no system. And I give you a very good example. A few weeks ago I was driving. You all know driving in Monaco. What happens if you're in peak times? You have traffic jams, right? So I was driving in Monaco, and there was the car next to me, and he was obviously on the phone, top down, and on the phone with one of his friends, and obviously arguing, saying, "Well, I'm really sorry, I'm late. but there's all those stupid people around me, they're blocking me. You know, I'm in a traffic jam, I'm really sorry I'm going to be late. It's the fault, it's all those stupid people around me. And I got upset, I was like, wait, he's talking about me here, right? I'm one of those stupid people. But then I realized, wait, he's right. I am not in a traffic jam. I am the traffic jam. Purposefully, this morning I took my car knowing there will be other cars. The traffic jam is not because of poor weather or construction works or whatever, you know. There's a traffic jam because I purposefully took my car this morning. So I'm not in the traffic jam. I am the traffic jam. There is no system. We are the system. So we need to stop thinking that there is this overall system that prevents us from changing the world. There is no system. We are the system. And the world will change when we start changing our habits, our behaviors, and our beliefs. So the first concept, and I have a beautiful picture of the traffic jam, sorry. So the first concept is all about, well, let's go back to the creativity of people, to their ability to change the world. And you know what? Organizations, whether it's a government organization or a corporation, they're all here to maintain the status quo, right? A company is actually created to make sure things don't change in some way. Yet in that organization, there are consciences. There are people that are going to say, you know what? I'd like to change the world. And the role of a leader is really to allow those consciences to express themselves, to open the path to utopia. So that is my first, in a sense, my first level. Now, the second one is if you want that change to last in time, you have to institutionalize it. Sorry, it's a very difficult word. Now you have to make institutionalize it. Thank you. In a sense, you have to make alliance. And I give you a good example. 2008, during the financial crisis, and I guess you all remember what happened, panic on the markets, and companies, and governments did something very interesting at the time. And I'm not talking about just one government. Governments in Northern America as well as in Europe. They approached the big car manufacturing companies. And they told them, all right, you guys took too much from your suppliers. You need to give back. You pulled too much on the string. Now it's time for you to give back to the suppliers so they can survive. So that second point is about understanding who is in your ecosystem. What are the people that depend from the business you're conducting? Who are the people that are willing at some point to take a step on the side and say, you know what, I'll change the world with you? And how are you going to, one, value them, and two, take care of them? So the second point is about changing the paradigm of thinking that the only purpose of an organization is to create shareholders' value. There's much more than that. It's about taking care. Yeah, completely killing Milton Friedman in that sense. And so it's about taking care of your environment, of your ecosystem. The third idea, the third milestone that I would like to present to you is about the treasure of relationship. And in a sense, this is the most fundamental issue. And I give you an example. In November 2005, Danone went into a partnership in Africa, in Bangladesh, with a company, with a bank called Grameen Bank. And what they wanted to do is to create a social enterprise, a partnership to deliver social product and social services in Africa. And together they developed a yogurt in particular, which was called Mishtitoy, I believe. And basically that yogurt, very different from the one you can buy here in Europe, was very, very full of nutrients, ingredients, and it was supposed to fight malnutrition, which is obviously an issue in Africa. So they met with a bunch of women in one of the villages. And they started explaining, reviewing all the advantages of their new product. Nutrients, affordable, and so on and so forth. And then they opened up the floor to questions. And there was complete silence. Up until a time when a woman, all the way at the end, raised her hand and said, "Hi, my name is Yamina, and I have a question. Because you see, today, I babysit the kids of my neighbor. In exchange for that, she gives me milk. So I'm able to do my own yogurt with this milk, and I give this yogurt to my kids. And because I babysit her kids, she's able, in turn, to go around all the villages around our village and sell her milk. So she's productive. She's actually making money. So I understand that your yogurt is great for my kid. But if I buy your yogurt, that means I have to get a job. If I get a job, I cannot babysit the kids of my neighbor. So what's going to happen with it? And you see, this is one of the most difficult questions I've ever heard. I don't have an answer. It's been 10 years, I don't have an answer to that question. And actually no one was ever able to give me an answer to that question. Very difficult question. And the problem is because we are unable to perceive the relationship between Yamina and her neighbor other than this sort of archaic old system of economy, where basically there is risk, where there is codependence. I depend from Yamina, I depend from my neighbor. And what is our system? What is our economy? Our economy is exactly the opposite. Our economy is about, I try to make sure I'm self-sustainable. I love to go to the bank and get cash without talking to a banker. I love to go to the grocery market and get my food items without talking to the grocery shop attendant. Actually, even better, if I can do it online, I'll do it online. And so it's all about being self-independent, not depending from others. And you see, in a sense, we have dehumanized our economy. We have sort of taken the human aspect out of our interactions. And I want to show you something. In a sense, we are today in what we call a stock economy, well, clearly. So it's about having things, possessing things, making sure we have enough money so we don't depend from others. Whereas Yamina, for example, is more in a flow economy, in an economy where there's risk, there's constant exchange, and you reach out to others, you give in order to receive. Another way to describe it is, well, we are more in an economy of having, possessing things, whereas Yamina is clearly in an economy of being. And so that's a major difference. And as long as we don't understand this, we don't understand this difference, well, we may be facing a situation where our economy will be dying. Because we have taken out the human value behind every transaction. So we have to change. If we want this economy to survive, we have to change. We have to rehumanize our interactions. Now, whoops. On that path, I'd like to share a quote from an Indian poet. So too difficult name to say, I stumbled on that one again. But he said, well, beyond good and evil, there is a field. I will find you there. And my wish for you is that you go sit in that field as often as you can. And you will see that when you welcome human values again, it's really with yourself that you have it. It's with yourself that you yourself. And the world needs you, all of you. And I hope that some of the path that we drew today will help you through this journey. So together, let's stand up and go. Thank you.